On today's episode, we get the stock airbox back in our 300ZX. Welcome back to the Auto Obsessive Garage. Chadwick with you again for another installment of Turbo Z32. That is our Nissan 300ZX twin turbo from the vintage year 1990. In our quest to return the car back to stock and good running condition today, our big objective is to get that aftermarket intake out of there and drop in the stock airbox. So that's actually a tougher job than you'd think. If you have to put the whole airbox assembly back in there. It's a tight spot just like everything else is on this car, but that's what we're doing today. So let's get in the garage and get some work done. Before we dig into this thing, we really need to get under this hood and clean things up. It's looking a little dirty, a little too dirty for my liking anyway. So let's go ahead and give her a good scrubbing up top, and then of course down below where we're gonna spend the majority of our time getting real dirty. So let's go ahead and clean this up. This aftermarket oil is not floating my boat. I don't know who makes it. Might be a good one, but I'm going for stock here. I have actually gone and sourced an OEM Nissan oil cap from the dealership. Let's go ahead and install that at this time. Off with the old one. Yeah, it's really nice weight to it, nice billet. Our new one back in the spot of that old aftermarket one, and just make it look factory under here. And there we go, back to stock. The next thing we have to return to stock under the hood is this Nismo radiator cap. I'm not sure if that's authentic or not. I know Nismo's often reprinted and copied, so we're gonna go ahead and swap that out with, of course, the OEM Nissan radiator cap. Let's do that at this time. Perfect. Nothing like going back to OEM. Time to get this aftermarket intake off the car and put a stock unit back in. So as you guys remembered, or if you don't, there's that aftermarket cone air filter. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that at this time. We're gonna need more space to get the new unit in, or the OEM stock unit. So I'm gonna actually pull these two clamps here, get these off these hard lines and pull the whole unit out. So you're gonna have to remove your MAF for that. Make sure you don't lose the retaining clip for your MAF plug. After you remove that, the plug simply comes off and you can tuck it to the side so it'll be nice and out of the way. Next up, we're gonna undo these two clamps and pull the whole unit out. And that's that intake unit removed. We're gonna go ahead and take the intake off at this time. To separate this air filter from our MAF, we're gonna go ahead and take these 4 bolts off, 10 millimeters. Yeah, so here's the air filter that was on there. It has a little adapter plate so it can mount to the 300ZX. I'm not quite sure that this is plug and play. Usually with something like this, you're changing the airflow. That MAF has a little range with the ECU usually where it can adjust that extra airflow, but sometimes this really just messes up how your car runs. Now, you guys know I am a fan of mods. Now with supporting tuning, you could probably adjust everything piggyback or standalone and make your car see this extra air and do something with it, but I'm not really a big fan of these kind of setups. This doesn't seem like it's gonna make the car any better. So hopefully going back to that stock airbox will get us some better and more reliable performance, as well as passing that all-important smog. Now this isn't gonna fly. Let's clean this up a little bit before we install it back on the car. It's looking good enough to me. Let me show you guys what the stock airbox assembly looks like that we'll be connecting this to. Not a bad idea to clean our MAF sensor right there. Get some mass airflow sensor cleaner and give it a little hose down in there. Let that dry for a while before, of course, using it. Now this is the stock airbox assembly for this vehicle, the 300ZX. As you can see, our MAF is going to bolt up right there. Those are those 4 10mm bolts. This is a little rough. It's a used one. We need to really clean it up a bit, as you can see. So we'll go ahead and do that at this time. I also sourced 2 air filters. This is a dual air filter car. So I went with the Mal brand, and that's what we'll be rocking. So we'll install each one on each side, kind of going in at an angle like this. But we'll do that step next. But first off, let's clean this unit up. And through the magic of film editing, everything is pretty cleaned up now. Time to add our air filters and clamp the box together. And then we'll go ahead and clamp all this together. We've got the airbox assembly complete. Time to attach the MAF, an actual air intake section, which attaches just like this with 4 10mm bolts. Now to get to those bolts, it's a little bit of a hassle. So what I'm gonna do is remove this right here, this band that holds that onto the MAF. And I'm gonna remove that so we can get access to those 10mm bolts that much easier. Once you loosen up that band, it's really easy to separate the MAF from this piping. And now we can easily attach the MAF section to the intake. So this job is a little tougher than I thought it was if you've never had to take an airbox out or put an airbox back into a 300ZX. It's not a fun job. So as you can see, the unit, or the bottom part of the unit, is in there. I think that's going to be the best way to approach this. So you kind of have to bend it in and work it at a weird angle. It's tough because the fan doesn't allow for a lot of space, and I've got that aftermarket oil cooler, which takes up some real estate, of course. So just kind of wedging it in there. You have 2 bolts up here and another 2 10mm bolts underneath that kind of hook to the front bracket. There's also this, I don't know if you can see it at the angle we're at. Yeah, I think you can. This kind of ribbed plastic here. This is an air diverter that allows air to go through that front grille and get to your radiator. So that's important. You don't want to leave this out. So you want to connect it to the bottom of the airbox via those 2 screws that are on either side. With all that set up, now it's going to be time. I think the most logical way to do this is to drop the 2 filters in, drop the top of the box in, and then the pipes where they connect with the MAF. I think that's how we're going to do it. We're going to see how it fits in here, but man, this is a pain in the butt getting in here. And you cannot just plop the whole unit in. There isn't enough space for that, so you got to take it apart, bottom half, top, and then we'll do the MAF and the 2 pipes going into the MAF. Man, this is a job. But anyway, that's going to be the next thing. I just wanted to show you guys a little tricky. Next step, we'll drop in our 2 new air filters. Pretty straightforward. Now let's go ahead and put the top of the airbox on. We're going to try this instead. I'm going to try to put these pipes on, the hoses back on first. So let's get those worked over. Everything is pretty nice and tight in here. Gotta love that. With the piping attached, I've actually left these clamps a little loose on either side so I can pivot this a little bit if I need to. Because the next part I'm going to slide in is the top of the airbox assembly with the MAF attached. The MAF obviously goes in right here. This is going to be a challenge, but let's see if we can make it happen. I might just need to push this back as much as I can. There is not much room though. Okay, we've got the top of the airbox assembly in there. That was not fun at all. Some advice, go ahead and loosen these 2 side bands up as much as you can so you can kind of pivot this assembly or these hoses backwards, and then you're going to use a screwdriver and kind of pry it up there to get it over the lip to the MAF. It is a real pain in the butt, but we're in there. Next, we got to make sure we secure all these clamps, tighten our screws down, make sure the air hoses are all tight, and I think that's pretty much it for this part. So let's go ahead and do that this time. The next step's a big one. Don't want to miss this. You want to reconnect your MAF. We'll clip it in here afterwards. But you want to remember that very important piece I told you not to lose. The little metal retaining clip. This thing is super important for holding that MAF connector on. Try to get a feel for it. Click it in nicely. You can secure your MAF cable right here. And there we go, stock airbox in. Let's clean this up a little bit, shall we? But other than that, we're back to stock airbox and stock air filters. This should help it run better for smog and emissions things, hopefully. So one more step and getting it back to stock. Stock airbox is all installed, MAF is hooked up, has its clip on there to keep the plug from coming off, has all the bolts holding it down, and is ready to have the cover put back on. This was quite an endeavor, but we're back to stock and that's how we want to be. Let's go ahead and put the airbox cover on and then we'll be done with this job. And with the cover in place over our intake airbox, everything's back to stock, back the way it should be. One big step complete. This should help a lot with smog and keeping the car in stock form, which is always our goal. So awesome. Great job complete. What a pain in the butt though.